Yeah, thanks, Amy. I appreciate it. And what a year it's been. It's been a wild 12 months. I'm really happy to be here and happy to kick off this inaugural Realtor GBVA joint meeting where we can kind of talk about some topics and trends and what's going on in each of our industries. I'm going to turn it over to our three panelists and kind of give them a minute or two to introduce themselves and go through what they do and who they work for and their perspective. So we'll start with Brad and let you introduce yourself, Brad.
Well, like Amy said, I guess I've been around a while, which I would identify as about 25 years. I've been a full-time realtor broker here. I'm with Keller Williams Realty. Obviously, most of my business is focused on residential. I do a little bit of commercial, a little bit of land, but the vast majority of it's residential. And yeah, like I said, I've been doing this for about 25 years.
Okay, good stuff, Brad. And Jimmy, how about you introduce yourself for our guests?
Yes, I'm Jimmy Pittman. I've been with Pittman Custom Homes. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. I've been a member of the Builders Association for the last 10 years as well, and raising the family up here and just loving it. 80% of our business is custom homes. 20% kind of comes out as speculative products. So this business is primarily focused around custom home building.
Okay, awesome, Jimmy. Now we'll let our developer panelist introduce himself a little bit here. So Chad Murphy, let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks. It's an honor to be here. Thanks, Adam, Amy, Rose, for putting this on. I think this is a neat platform for all of us to communicate. Yeah, Chad Murphy, developer, been in the development business for, I guess, pushing 20 years now. Actually came out of the Houston market, out of grad school, lived in College Station now for, I don't know, probably pushing 8 years. So primarily residential development. I've done some mixed use communities. Have a real passion for conservation oriented projects. So yeah, really passionate about community building.
All right. Thanks, Chad. I think we're going to jump right in now. So the first question I had for you guys, I was hired 12 months ago and almost 12 months ago, and it's been a wild 12 months with coronavirus and just recently the snowstorm. This has all taken place in the span of a year, which is kind of wild to think about. So the first question I had for you guys is, what are some of the trends over the last 12 months that you've noticed in your respective industries? So, Brad, how about from the realtor side? What are some of those trends over the last 12 months?
Adam, I'm still thinking you started 12 months ago. Did you start all this? What are you negative? Did you test before this? Trends over the last 12 months. I mean, probably the most surprising trend is, of course, obviously when everything shut down with COVID last spring, roughly about this time or pretty close to it, everybody held their breath thinking, oh man, is this going to implode? And then as soon as we were past that lockdown April, we started seeing things take off, and they have just exploded since then, from my perspective. And of course, looking at trends both from a local and national interrelated factors, clearly it's increase in demand, and that demand is largely driven by those super low interest rates. So those are two trends that were surprising. Didn't quite anticipate such an increase in demand, and then subsequent decrease in supply. Particularly as you get lower price ranges, which is always the case. Your entry-level price ranges are always going to be the most competitive. The most buyers are in that category, but there's even less now than there has historically or typically been. So it's making it kind of difficult to find first-time buyers' homes. It's getting very competitive. Other thing that I'm seeing besides just owner-occupied, typical domestic, demand for housing, is I'm seeing more investors both locally buying investment properties. So maybe people saying, I think the stock market's overvalued. I don't want to put any more of my money there. I want to diversify, and I can't get anything. Long-term CD is 2% if you're lucky. Let me buy some real estate, as well as out-of-state investors. So I'm seeing a number of out-of-area, out-of-state investors come here. That classic California investor. I literally just closed one yesterday. A listing of mine was a California investor. And, we saw that happen about a decade ago, a big influx of those investors. And so I'm seeing more of that now, as well as, like I said, the domestic investor, which are, once again, absorbing that available supply, a lot of it in that entry level price point, the stuff under about $250,000, 200,000. And it's just making it difficult for a lot of people to find housing. That would probably be the biggest trend is I'm seeing locally. On a realtor standpoint, from our specific industry, I'm seeing more competition from realtors from outside of the area. So your Houston, your Austin, your Dallas realtor coming here, trying to sell real estate to their buyer, as opposed to, hey, maybe referring that person or that person finding a local realtor. We're getting more and more of the outside realtor coming here. That's somewhat beneficial to our sellers, because I've seen a number of situations where those buyers probably paid more than they should have for some listings of mine, which benefited my seller, because their realtor from out of the area didn't understand our market. And they were coming from a market that was much more competitive. And so their mindset was, hey, you got to come in much higher, much closer to asking price or above ask. When if they'd have known that submarket, they might have realized, oh no, there's some negotiating room there. So there's some benefit to that to our sellers. As realtors, once again, you do have some more outside competition. So that's an industry trend that I'm seeing, and I think we're going to probably see more of that.
Yeah, so that squeeze on entry-level homes is something that I think I've noticed, and I think we've all kind of noticed that too. That's a big trend. From a builder side, what about you, Jimmy? What are you noticing?
Trends, kind of like Brad mentioned, this time last year, everything kind of almost came to a halt for a minute. And then it just picked up, like Brad mentioned. But what's unusual compared to the last 10 years, compared to the last 12 months, for us, at least on the custom side, has been, for example, my pipeline right now, half of the families in that pipeline are not from here. They're out of state, out of town. And I looked last night when I was thinking about this, and only one of them is moving here for a job. The rest of them are moving here for lifestyle purposes. They can either work from home.
Yep.
They don't need a job, or they just want to be around grandchildren or Texas A&M. So we're seeing a lot more of that. And so that's an opportunity and a challenge. How do you service or get out in front of that clientele? But we've seen just a really unusual amount of people coming from out of this area, and their reasons are kind of what we mentioned. Another trend, another thing that's happening right now, real time, it's unparalleled to anything we've in the industry seen before, is our commodity pricing is moving so fast. Lumber is the biggest material we use in our homes, and it's up over 100% from this time last year. So it's having a direct impact into pricing. Some of the products are up 400%, like your OSB board. But as a whole package, I think it's up about 120% from this week last year. So as builders, we're trying to address that, get out in front of it, kind of educate everyone what's going on with that. And so that's been a challenge for us, but it's definitely a trend. The prices are moving very fast on us. And other aspects with the pandemic, obviously we're seeing a lot of people working from home, connectivity. And so our floor plans are changing a little bit with that. Every house is requiring, is requesting an office and bonus room and some areas like that. But yeah, those are kind of the trends that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, when I was growing up and my parents were buying homes, things like that, the bonus rooms, the offices were afterthoughts. They weren't really thought about really. But I think if my parents were to do it again today, they work from home as well, and they would be doing the exact same thing. So that's really interesting. And Chad, if you want to jump in on a developer side, some of the trends over the last year.
Yeah, and I think it's important to kind of what Brad was looking at from a macroeconomic level, what was happening in the development industry over 2020. So
Mhm.
Q1, we kind of entered the market feeling good, and this is again at the macro level, optimistic, felt confident about delivering lots. COVID hits Q2, Q3. Behind the scenes, what many people didn't see and hit us dramatically was our funding. So essentially, the banks, private equity partners hit pause, and that's a real challenge in the development community because your model's predicated on movement, right? And it wasn't a hey guys, we're not going to fund it. It was a hey, we have to pause because development is speculative by nature, right? And we need to
Mhm.
understand how we're going to need to respond to this pandemic. So I mean, essentially for those 2 months, things just shut down for us. And then Q3 start to feel good, have a little more certainty on what's happening. And what ultimately I think we found, and I don't want to downplay the hardships and the many people that were impacted dramatically, but the buyer pool really wasn't impacted, right? The people that could work now continue to work from home. It just looked different. So the buying power remained. And so now going into Q4, into the new year, I mean, we can't put lots on the ground fast enough. So I obviously involved in projects here locally and in other markets, and the major markets, guys, I haven't seen anything like that since I lived in Houston in the early 2000s, when we were just going crazy. So the production builders right now are just trying to take down anything and everything they can. So big trend has been private equity. The investment into land in that space I mean, it's just flooding into the space. Now, the problem with that, because we always talk about affordability, now you have a competitive market, which is driving up price, which again, I'm trying to find new projects and it's really challenging because price, I can't back into it and deliver a lot that's affordable that somebody would want to buy and be marketable. So that's kind of a big trend, and thought it'd be helpful to share a little bit about what happened and why we're seeing some stop, and obviously the inventory is down. Another big push I would say from the development side trend is the storytelling piece of that. Meaning, I think it's more important than ever that we have a very strong web presence. Lifestyle is very important, outdoor recreation. So even some of the amenity offering that is you see in your standard traditional neighborhoods, we're trying to expand that. Okay, how can we interact and create spaces that we really probably weren't spending a ton of time thinking about previously. But having to tell that story, millennials are a big segment of the market now. They're buying homes. Research and information is critical. So the more we can put out on a web platform presence, it's really important to how we can communicate what's unique about our project. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, and I could get into the weeds of specific amenities and some trends I'm seeing there, but want to keep it going.
Yeah, no, that answers the question. And I think the overarching thread from what y'all have all said is that there are a lot of surprises that y'all didn't see coming with the pandemic, and what maybe you thought should have happened really didn't. A lot of things that just kind of came as surprises. So I
Hey,
want
girl. How are you?
to ask
Good.
y'all again.
How are you doing?
What are you guys doing to stay on top of those trends that you had talked about? So I'll throw it back to the panelists, and y'all can answer however you want, whatever order. But those trends you mentioned, how you stand on top of those?
From my perspective, I mean, really, I try to survey the buyers, primarily buyers I'm working with, buyers that are buying my listings, get an idea of where they're coming from, and why they're buying, as well as like information Jimmy provided. I mean, that's talking to builders, talking to people that are on the front lines there, talking to the new buyers coming in. Who are you seeing? Are you seeing more retirees? Are you seeing more investors? Are you seeing more local people upgrading, and seeing how that meshes with what I'm seeing personally? But talking to the local real estate community, realtors, and other friends that I have in different markets is the main way I keep on top of it. Obviously, I look at news media and national sources, but most of obviously our business is local, and it's the people here that are dealing with the clientele here that is the most valuable information.
I would agree with that, Brad. That's a big driver for us, is just to have constant communication and willingness to adapt. Once you receive that information, what are you going to do with it? But to make sure there's an open dialogue with the brokers, the realtors, the builders. I'm spending a lot more time than I had previously with like market research groups. I mean, as we bring in new projects, trying to get their feedback. They have a pretty good pulse of market. I think a few platforms like Urban Land Institute's a good group that is continuing education. You could go to sites like that, are important to stay on top of trends. But I really do think it's locally for sure is just communicating with all parties involved in the real estate community.
Yeah, the HBA has been a big part for us to remain connected to other builders and kind of discuss trends like the price increases that we've seen in a lot of these commodities. We've also participated in kind of a national group of builders that get together and discuss these kind of things. So we're all able to see them coming up on the horizon. But to Brad's point too, the way that I feel that our company is the way to stay ahead of some of the style trends or just wants that people are needing is through meeting our customers in the field. And the best way that the most information gathering we get every year comes in the spring and the fall with the parade of homes. We get our team out into these houses and talk to 150 to 350 people a weekend. And through that, you start seeing the same Pinterest picture over and over again. You know that everybody's going to want this detail coming up. So that's been our number one way of getting it. And we're looking, the Parade of Homes is coming up here at the last weekend of April and the first weekend of May. Just wanted to put that out there. But those things. And then, of course, Courtney, my wife, is our designer. She is plugged into all the networking, social media, designers, getting all that information out in front of us too.
Yeah. So that's a great segue, Jimmy, into our third question. You talked about staying on top of the style preferences, the style trends, looking at Pinterest and social media. Kind of getting a little specific with that. What are some of those latest preferences you're seeing in residential that people are looking for? This is a question for all three of you. Commercial spaces as well, but I know the three of y'all are primarily focused on residential. So just any of those preferences or trends that you're seeing that customers are looking for.
Sure. I mentioned this earlier, but everybody's wanting to have some sort of office.
Yep.
And if an office space isn't available to them, at least designing in what we'll call like a Zoom room, a place where they can get on a video call like this and not have all the chaos in the background and become a meme on social media somewhere. A bonus space is great if possible. A lot of families have been adding that bonus room above the garage, a way to get away, send the kids upstairs or just to get away during the day, a place they didn't have during maybe the lockdown. And then, so like Chad's communities, access to nature trails. People want to be able to get outside easily, maybe not around a bunch of people, but be able to get outside and kind of connect to nature. And then recently, since last week, we've gotten 4 houses were either starting or in construction have gone ahead and committed to doing the energy generator backup system.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're going to see some of that in the near term until people feel more confident in our grid situation as a whole. But those are things that we're seeing right now.
Yeah. Are you noticing a lot of the same things, Brad, with customers coming in to buy existing homes or?
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy pretty much hit on all the bullet points that I was going to talk about, that desire for more space. I mean, people always desire to have, a yard and some elbow room from their neighbors, and that trend to more of a bonus room or that office space that you can, I would say enjoy, but that you can tolerate spending a large amount of time in. So something with a window, not just an afterthought, I've seen higher demand. The contradiction of that is, once back to affordability. What available lots available. When you're looking at the cost of development, you're seeing smaller and smaller lots to reduce cost and putting a smaller house on it. Well, that limits the amount of space for that study and limits the yard. So, but I've had several people I've worked with that were like, yeah, a month of COVID lockdown in the apartment, we got to get a bigger space. It's been a great selling factor because you coop somebody up for 3-4 weeks in a small space, they realize we can't do this again. And it's kind of like Jimmy's saying on the radiators or the generators. You go without power for a week, suddenly that generator doesn't seem as expensive, and it sure would be nice to be able to plug that in if you have this happen again. But on a upper end price range, as people get beyond the entry level home, one thing that I've seen is swimming pools. That's one of those things where people are like, you know what, I can't travel because of COVID. I got to be at home. Man, I want a pool. And in the past, pools were one of those things. There was like, hit or miss. About half your clientele wouldn't care to have a pool. And those that did would pay a little bit extra, but not a tremendous amount more. Now it's a bonus thing where people are willing to pay a lot more for it. And I've historically told people, decent pool, you plan on maybe getting 50 cents on the dollar back from it when you go to sell it. I would say there's a number of people that have gotten all their money back on their pool they put in 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago or even further. So, there's some interesting trends that COVID has created that have changed the demand for some aspects of homes.
Adam, I think I could add on the development side a real focus on what the community offering set is now. Working on a new project and just completed a market study. It was really interesting to get the feedback. Less emphasis on a vertical construction, so your traditional gyms and rec centers, and everything was really more oriented to outdoor and programming. So community gardens, a hike and bike trail, dedicated green space. That was the real push. And how do you create, again, unique spaces for the community and not have it an afterthought, but really be the driver of what's selling the space. So I don't think that trend will stop. I think now that people have who knows how it plays out, right? But I think there's some permanency behind this, and with so many people working from home, they want that offering, want to get outside, want to connect with neighbors. So I there's going to be a big emphasis on that. Jimmy, you talked about alternative energy. I'm currently working on a geothermal project, trying to figure out, can you bring that to scale? Because the biggest issue with alternative energy currently has been it's very expensive when it's one product. But when you put it within a community, it provides that economy of scale where you can reduce the cost. I don't think it's quite there yet, but it's encouraging to know there's a lot of people in this space trying to figure it out. And I think that will continue to be something we need to explore and find ways to start implementing in developments.
To add on what Chad just said, and this is a trend that I've seen over my 25 years, when you're looking at the newer communities in the community space, that park and the jogging trails and the hiking trails and that kind of thing. In the past, HOA dues were a huge negative. Oh my gosh, they want $150 a year, and it was very common in bigger areas like the Metroplex in Houston, decades ago, to be spending $400, $500, $600 a year in HOA dues to have a lot of that space. I think maybe a lot of those people moving here, but also people moving to communities here where the lots they're buying on are so much smaller, they're willing to pay for that additional space, that common community space, because they use it. And so now people don't bat an eye on, $400, $500, $600 a year in HOA dues, but I've got a park, I've got some trails, there's a pool. They're more willing to spend the money on that. And that's that's one thing that I have not seen it as being much of an issue over the last several years, whereas in the past it was something people always brought up.
Yeah, it turns out when you lock people up in the same room for a year, they find the value in maybe having some outdoor space they can use to escape for a little bit, get some fresh air, get some sun, come back and get back to work. So, I mean, those are all great points. And you'd already kind of touched on this, Brad and Chad and Jimmy as well. But kind of what makes our overall real estate industry here in the Bryan-College Station or Brazos Valley different from other markets? So like Brad, what are those out of state or out of town realtors missing when they come here? What makes us stand out from the bigger metroplexes or other markets?
Well, no, I think if I went to Houston to sell real estate in Houston, it's understanding the submarkets. I mean, do I know what the average price per square foot is in the Longwood subdivision or Black Horse or over in Friendswood? If I'm not working that market, I don't know it. I think that's the problem, is just understanding a market, particularly when you're talking about a big metro area. There's lots of submarkets that can change considerably. But even our area, there's, different neighborhoods, different price ranges, different, appreciations and values and that kind of thing. It's understanding those that makes the difference between a realtor providing service and not providing service to their client. Same thing with construction costs. I've had a lot of people come here in the past, say from Houston, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, your new homes here are so expensive." And they're expecting, Cowtown, Bryan-College Station, we're going to get something dirt cheap. And what I have to point out to them is, look at the quality you're getting. Right. You buy a lot of the homes, your Emeralds, your Pulte's, your Kimball Hills in the Houston area. Yeah, you get a McMansion, but look at the quality of the trim. Look at the quality of the insulation. Look at and there you're dealing with a sales guy. Here you're dealing with the builder. You're talking to Jimmy Pittman, and he's the guy that's ultimately responsible for that house. And you're getting a better quality product, but it's understanding that and the nuances and the differences of it. I mean, that's why a lot of big builders have, nice fancy model homes that are really nicely decorated. A buyer just walks in and goes, "Oh, wow, look at this." And they envision themselves here, but they're not looking at the details, and they don't scratch to the surface to see, well, are you really getting what you're paying for? So, I mean, that's where understanding that market is important. And it's not something you can learn in a week or a month or even a year. You gotta immerse yourself in that market. One reason I really don't sell any real estate outside of the Bryan-College Station area. I don't know those markets. I refer them to an agent there that I know that knows those markets. Our area in particular, I mean, obviously, this is saying the obvious. We're just so insulated. When you've got Texas A&M that has a philosophy of growth, and then they're affiliated with the Rellis campus that has a philosophy of growth, and that's all coordinated with Blinn College, and then a lot of large corporations not investment, but research type projects funded by federal government. A lot of vaccine stuff. In fact, even today's paper, there's a new company here that's gearing up to build vaccines and or research vaccines and other biotechnology. All of that coordinating together, the upside to that here is tremendous. The potential is tremendous. And it makes, and plus the size of our community is now at a point where it's still got that more hometown kind of feel while having a lot of resources that bigger cities are now getting. Now, we may regret this. We may have a little bit too much of a good thing. And Austin's probably regretting this now because, with Oracle moving there and Tesla and a whole bunch of other companies, buying real estate there is next to impossible. I mean, it's just gone bonkers. Traffic's horrible, but it's careful what you ask for. Sometimes they're growing leaps and bounds, but they have all the negatives that go with it. We've got a lot of really positive things here, but once that momentum gets going, there's really no way to pull it back. And you're going to get the negatives that come with the positives of growth. Ultimately, the beautiful thing about our area is we're very insulated. And a lot of that big money that's coming in that brings people here is money that doesn't easily go away. It's federal money that's been sent here for research projects or education. And they never seem to cut budgets at higher education institutions. So, we are able to weather the storm a lot better. But unfortunately, like I said, we may be getting a little too much of a good thing as the time goes by.
Yeah, and kind of to jump on what Brad was saying there, something that's unique to our market, I think, is that you get into these bigger metropolitan areas, they're able to, buy a 1,200 acre ranch and just develop it and kind of flood the market with inventory. Where here, I feel we have a lot more of a slower ability to bring neighborhoods online and stuff. So our inventory is just a little more controlled, where we don't have these huge peak and valleys with economic cycles. And two, I think if you're coming from an outside market, especially if you're trying to practice real estate in our market or trying to understand how it all works, I think the personality of the people in our industry is from an outside market is unique, because I think that it seems like a lot of people, if they're chasing a career, they might move on down the road to Houston. But the people who've invested in our community seem to want to better the community, raise their family. And it's just, I think it's a lot less cutthroat. We work together really well. And then also to Brad's point too, my cousin builds in San Antonio, and when he comes up and visits, he's astonished by the amount of trim and the level of countertops and just all the details that come in to our home. So I think we are one of the last mid to growing size markets that majority of the people in the business are mom and pop builders. They're not necessarily the national brands. So I think we still have that unique characteristic that people, once they kind of get over the initial race, there's no race to the bottom pricing, they really kind of enjoy the details and the story behind it.
Yeah.
So that makes us a little unique.
I think that I can't add much to what you guys said. I do think location is within the triangle of your major markets, and we all know this. But I'm starting to see a lot as we do, obviously these market studies and research. People that were contemplating retirement are just saying, "Yeah, let's go." I have a daughter in Houston, a son in Dallas. This is the right spot for me, and that pull and connection to A&M. I think the lifestyle offering, there's enough commercial opportunity now where they can stay busy and engaged. They can engage in all of the opportunities that A&M provides, from sporting to events. That's driving a lot of people here. I think we'll continue to see that. And Brad, Jimmy, you were hitting on all these guys in these other cities, but we're seeing that. And from a development perspective, we're even pushing where we can develop now. Like, how far out can we actually go and still make a project to be affordable, right? Because we think now, if you have the right offerings and lifestyle, because of the workspace, you can, and A&M as a second tier market can provide so much of that. So I think location matters a lot.
Well, you click on affordability too, because to get land that's affordable, you're going to have to start going further out.
Right.
I always think about Fairfield outside of 290 outside of Houston. And when that was first developed, which was decades ago, everybody called it Farfield because it was just so far outside of Houston. And now Houston's growing up right around it. It was ironic. There's a number of communities outside of the greater Houston area, and same with the Metroplex and so forth. Same thing. I think here, that's where you're going to have to see, when you roll into that idea of affordability and, like Jimmy said, inventory, you're going to start having to see going further out and probably into the adjacent counties, go Grimes, Robertson, Burleson, and doing a master plan community out there where you can build something that's 1,000, 1,500 lots, 2,000 lots for a long-term development. And then, that people be willing to commute to be able to get to affordable housing.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. I'm noticing there are people developing and building in Caldwell and in Navasota, and people are willing to make the drive from those places into College Station to work. And it wasn't that long ago that I was in school, but people weren't doing that when I was in school here. Those thinking of Caldwell as almost a suburb of College Station would have sounded crazy, but that's what's going on. So we've got about 15 minutes left on on our allotted time. So I wanted to open it up to some Q&A now. Like Amy said, you can type them in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and speak up and voice it that way. So I'll turn it over back to Amy and our participants, and we can have a little Q&A for our panelists.
Cool. All right.
Actually,
thanks, everybody. Super awesome information. So we do have one question that we'll start with that came up in the chat box here. So the question would be for Brad. So do you have clients that have been interested in purchasing a house in College Station, but may have found it to be too expensive? And if so, how often do you run into this?
I mean, I think it's fairly common. I mean, you look like your entry-level type buyer. We've just got a client under contract that we lost out on multiple properties because there was multiple bids on that one property that was, in their price range, 180, 190,000. There's properties available, but, a lot of them need a lot of work. And so, it's the double-edged sword of the first-time buyer. You're at the lower price point, but so much of what you can buy is requires cash to be able to upgrade it. And so you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Finding something that's livable, that's affordable, and that's always been the case. 25 years ago when I got in this business, it was like, okay, it's kind of hard to find something around 100,000. And when I say something, I mean a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house around 100,000. Now that's a total pipe dream. It doesn't exist. And that's always been the case. I think when you start talking about affordability, you have to ask yourself, okay, what does that mean? Is affordability mean that the median household income for your MSA, that person should be able to afford what? A condo, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house less than 10 years old? You got to identify those two things in terms of affordability before you can address, that issue. You can talk to people coming here from California, most of California. A lot of people from the East Coast will think, oh my gosh, this place is dirt cheap, But then you talk to people from a lot of other areas, and they're like, golly, your real estate's expensive. So it's, what is affordability? The other thing too, ironically, reading in Sunday's paper, and yes, I actually still read the Eagle, but it is a source of my information. There was an article there, the financing guru, Ramsey, somebody had asked him about buying a house. And on his article, and he said, well, first thing you need to do is pay off all your short-term debt, then have 6 months worth of reserves saved, and then save enough money for a 20% down payment on a 15-year note. Now, if you use that criteria, easily 90% of all the first-time buyers I've ever worked with would have never bought a home. In fact, probably the majority of the people I work with, period, would not buy a home. So, what are your criteria in terms of affordability and finance? It's a very complicated question. I would say in general right now, if somebody's looking to find a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in decent condition, it's going to be, regardless of Bryan or College Station, it's going to be pretty tough to find much under about 200, 190. Now, if you want to find a condo, buy a condo, there's quite a few condos that are available. But in terms of single family home, that's it's challenging. I'd say that 200,000 price point's kind of where it starts.
Great. Thank you, Brad. So I think I've got a hand raised from Jason Bianski. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Amy. I've got a question, Brad, Chad, and Jimmy, all of you. This will affect all of y'all's industries, but how are we dealing with the appraisals now? I mean, I just for an example, fixing a list of property in the barracks over the last 2 weeks, I bet the price per foot has gone up $10 a week. So are we all waiting for that cash buyer to come in and then we're good at that 170, 180 a foot? But I've seen the price per foot. I mean, you're seeing that in development, you're seeing that in construction prices, and you're seeing that on the resales now. How are the appraisers adapting so quickly if the comps aren't necessarily there from the last 6 months with the escalation in the price per foot on everything?
I would say for my end, on like the resale end, I'm seeing appraisers doing pretty good keeping up with that. There are some price segments or some situations where the data isn't there to support it. A good example, I sold a property on Camp Creek, and I had two good contracts, but both one appraised for about 40,000 less, and the buyer came up a little bit, seller wouldn't come down all the way, so that fell apart. Another one came in, it appraised again, this time for about 50,000 less. Buyer came up about 30,000, seller came down a little bit, still couldn't bridge the gap. Third offer, the buyer came in and said, I'll buy it regardless. And if it doesn't appraise, I'll throw in the extra equity. And it didn't appraise, and they did. And so now that piece of data is out there, and that establishes a new benchmark for appraisers to use. But I had a long discussion with one of the appraisers, and they said, the problem is we are stuck having to use the available sold data. And we can, within limits, we can work on that, but we get beat up by the underwriters if we go too far. And so there's only so much we can do. I'd be curious to know, Jimmy, on your end, in terms of loan appraisals for you to get construction financing, are you running into issues there with the overnight escalation in construction costs?
So far we've been fortunate not to, but it's coming. Especially as we enter some of these new phases of neighborhoods where just naturally the lot cost increase, and then we've seen the lumber cost jump. So we're going to see some pretty big spreads coming up. And there's not a whole lot we can do to prepare for that. There are some appraisers who will allow custom homes that's been built to use that as a comp, and others that say, no, it was not on the market, you can't use that. So that's kind of a conversation that's different with every appraiser, but it's definitely a topic that's being discussed. We're trying to get in front of it and talk to our families about that, potential appraisal issues coming up down the road, and kind of just talking through scenarios of how they will approach it and handle it throughout the transaction.
Awesome. Chad?
I don't have as much fluctuation, at least on the land acquisition side, on development now. If we're bringing a product to market that is on the higher end, communicating with the appraisal community and educating them on the type of offering and type of project is really important. But yeah, I don't think I have the same type of fluctuation that probably Jimmy and Brad. We just don't have that frenzy. I wish I had that problem.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, guys. So other questions. So if you want to unmute, you can and ask a question. You can type it in the chat box. We have a few minutes left, and we appreciate everybody's time today. But I thought it would be, good if anybody has a question that they would want to ask. Okay, I guess that is that on the Q&A then. So I would like to thank everybody for their time today. And, we really appreciate the input from our panelists, Brad, Chad, Jimmy. It was so great to hear from you today. We're going to post this recording. I'm going to edit the sections down, and we'll post it so that our association, as well as the Builders Association, can share that information out. And thank you, Adam, for being our master of ceremonies here, our moderator for our questions. And Rose, do you want to help kind of close the meeting out?
Sure, that's great. Really good information. I hear a lot on the builder and developer side, and it was just really refreshing to hear the perspective from the realtor side as well. Brad, thank you. You did a great job. Adam, good way to recap everything. Jimmy and Chad, really appreciate you being such great representatives for our industry. And I look forward to many more of these. The education process, I think, is just beginning, and we can help each other out as we move forward to really learn what the issues are that affect all of our industries. So
And can
great job.
And Rose, can I just close out? I really want to thank you and Amy and Adam. I think as we talk about affordability, we all have concerns in the community. You guys taking this proactive approach to share information, to collaborate. I apologize to everyone here. There's a lot better developers, so you probably will get more information next time. But the beauty is that we're talking, because that's what's going to drive movement. And I mean, from impact fees and making sure that we're educating our local officials, that they understand how policies that they implement impact our community, because we all want to drive down the affordable housing. So I just want to thank you guys for putting this on. It was a privilege to be part of it. And yeah, thank you for all the efforts you're taking.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. Asking the questions was easy. It was answering them that was the hard part. So thank you for doing that.
We're just winging it. It's just winging it.
Well, we'll definitely continue these forward. It's one of our big goals this year as the two organizations continue our work together. And we're really fortunate to be able to have each other in each other's, circles and have each other's backs. So we really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for participation. Thank you to our panelists. And if you have any suggestions of future content you would want to see brought into these meetings, please don't hesitate to send an email to myself, Adam, or Rose, or all three of us, and we'll be happy to get things organized for y'all. So have a great afternoon, and thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.